This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning and welcome to, good morning. Let's start off that again. Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations Aren't Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We're out of the Waisman Center. We cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, but dang it all, we have friends all across the state. And I feel like today I'm introducing what should be the next big morning drive radio show called Scott and Friends. And so we will be doing the I guess it would be the afternoon drive now with Scott and Friends. We are here to talk about Tourette and Tics. What is Tourette? How do families find supports? We hear there's this fantastic conference coming up in April. I want to hear about all of it. But first, I'd love to know how would you guys describe, what do you want people to know about Tourette?
Well, Tourette's is first of all, my name's Scott Loeff. I'm on the board of the Wisconsin Tourette Association, and I'm also the founder of Tourette Syndrome Camp USA, with this 1-week youth residential program for kids with Tourette's and obsessive compulsive disorder camp in Illinois. Tourette's is, by definition, a neurobiological condition that causes individuals to make involuntary noises and movements. The tics are in two categories. One can be a verbal tic, which can be anywhere from sniffling, coughing, anything verbally, all the way to the more complex, which we call coprolalia, which is swearing, which is what we like to call the TV Tourette's, which the media likes to play up. Everyone's Tourette's has the coprolalia, the swearing, which is not the case, because only the most is 10% of people with Tourette's actually have the coprolalia. The other tic is a motor tic, which can be any type of movement of the body. It could be a head jerking, elbow, arms, knees, jumping, kicking, you name it, you can be it. And the one thing to know is that each case of Tourette's is different. People may have a combination of vocal and physical tics. No two cases are pretty much the same. So, Brian or Ryan, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Ryan. I am one of the co-directors at Tourette's Camp USA that Scott mentioned in Illinois. Scott pretty much covered most of it, but the biggest thing that I think is really important that people understand is, like Scott said, everyone is a little bit different. And so a lot of times when I explain to people that I have Tourette's, they're like, what? Are you sure? Like, you know, it is very different from person to person. And so just knowing that, because maybe you knew one person with Tourette's, someone else that you might meet later in life, it could look very different for them. So just knowing that for each person, it's just a little bit different.
Ryan?
That's actually what I was about to say as well, kind of emphasize that. But I'm Brian. I'm the other co-director of the Tourette Syndrome Camp in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, just it's, you know, some people, like Ryan was said, you know, you might see somebody with Tourette's doing, you know, kind of more typical head jerking and other things. But then there might be somebody else doing something, you know, very odd for even somebody with Tourette's, but, you know, it's still their tics. And yeah, so.
And I'm from listening to you guys, I'm assuming this is a condition. I don't know exactly how you would describe it, that starts pretty early on. And so we're talking from birth, from little children. How does this appear?
It usually symptoms will start, not always, it will start when someone is young. It could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One tic may appear, then more tics, verbal or motor tics. There is no cure for it. They're not exactly sure what causes it. They know there's some imbalance in brain chemicals on it, and usually the symptoms will change over time, not always, but the tics will change. There is no cure for the Tourette's, but there is treatment in the way of medications. And then there's also a very growing, which has had good success, a non-medication treatment called CBIT, cognitive behavioral intervention therapy, which uses kind of like a behavior modification to help individuals redirect their tics, help them kind of control them. And not always, but the usual pattern with Tourette's, as someone gets older into their teens, the Tourette's does subside. That does not always happen. In my case, my Tourette's has been pretty frequent. The severity's not really changed since I was like diagnosed at age 7, and now I'm getting on to, well, up there in years. And the way people get help is usually once they get diagnosed by a doctor that is familiar with Tourette's, they might be able to reach out to what's called the Tourette Association of America. Tourette Association of America has chapters, I think it's in 24 different states, but I think I have a total between chapters and support groups, about 52 active right now within the United States. The Wisconsin Tourette Association does have a pretty active chapter, and we actually have a conference coming up in April 1st. It's called the Tourette Connect Conference, which will be April 1st in Campbell Sports, Wisconsin, which is about an hour northwest of Milwaukee. We do have speakers on variety of speakers on. We have a program for adults and parents of children with Tourette's. We have speakers on disability rights, workplace accommodations, transitioning, which Tim is doing. We have a panel discussing adult issues with Tourette's. We have a speaker on education and Tourette's. And also we have a doctor talking about updates on Tourette science and technology updates. During the conference, we are also having a separate program with for the youth. This is for children and teenagers that have Tourette's and their siblings. We'll be doing there'll be a presentation by Wise out of Rogers Memorial Hospital. It's called Up to Me. That's to help a child decide if and when they talk about their Tourette's. And then each child attending the youth program will have an opportunity to get a video clip which they can use to explain to others about their Tourette's. So this should be a fun, packed, a very informative Saturday, April 1st, which I've been told by my staff I'm not allowed to tell any April Fool jokes on it.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, I've been on a couple of calls with you, and I've never heard April Fool's jokes, but I've heard some of your other jokes. So I'm definitely in the camp that says no.
Yeah,
I'm firmly there.
Yeah. And Brian will be there to help run the children's program. We'll have some of the staff from Tourette Syndrome Camp USA there to run the children's program. So kids that come will get it kind of like a slice of what camp is like. And we're doing this at the Turning Rivers campsite, which is in Campbellsport, Wisconsin. And I think, Tim, you can put up a registration link.
You know, Ellie is totally all over this.
Oh, okay.
And so if you look in the chat, you'll see that Ellie has been adding some links along with the registration. We would love to see you guys there. I will be there speaking about transition, and I have not been back at camp since the traumatic incident in the 5th grade. And so it'll be decades since I have stood on campground. So it's going to be really interesting to see how I react to being back on any sort of
Can't wait to see that.
camp. It just, let me tell you, it's only because I like you guys that I agreed to speak at a camp. Okay, that's just, it was not a good experience. So just speaking of experiences, what are some of the positives, the strengths of people who have Tourette's? What do you see as the, people may sit there and there may be stigma, and I'm sure there's challenges that we can also talk about, but what are some of the strengths that you also see in the community?
Well, maybe Brian or Ryan can address that.
I mean, the biggest thing that comes to mind that we talk about, is just being able to, accept and kind of empathize for other people, just, having a disability ourselves and being, a little bit, different or, so I think that's kind of the biggest thing I think that, I felt, my experience and what I've, me, Ryan and Scott, everybody just in general, can kind of just you see somebody else and say, oh, feel some type of way. And then also just kind of, dealing with this throughout life kind of makes you, I don't know, it's been a struggle, for a lot of the way, which kind of makes, I think, maybe other struggles easier, if that makes any sense. But
yeah, no, I agree with everything Brian said. And I think that for me too, I've gotten the question before, like, if you could go back and like there was a cure for it, like when you were a kid or something, like, would you have taken it? Like, I've had people ask me that before, and I'm like, I don't know, because I'm the person I am today because of it.
when you got to meet me, I could meet you.
Yeah. I feel that my Tourette's has made me very strong, and independent in my own ways of like, I had to go through a lot of struggles and internal fights with my own body, that I think a lot of people maybe like, as a kid with Tourette's, you have zero control of your body. Your brain is telling your body to do things you don't want to, and at times it can hurt. It's exhausting. It's uncomfortable. It can be embarrassing. And so going through those struggles at such a young age can be really, really challenging mentally, emotionally, physically. But then, when you get through that other side as an adult, I think it like makes you a stronger human as in later in life. And so I feel like those experiences, and like Brian said too, I think that having Scott and having Brian and the community around me, like finding camp when I was in 4th grade, and this summer will be Brian and I's 20th year at camp. I think that was a huge reason as to why as well, like having the community of knowing other people with Tourette's and getting to, as a kid, see adults with Tourette's and living very normal lives. And then myself now getting to show that to younger kids and getting to work with them. I think that's a huge piece of kind of creating a strong adult life.
So Ryan, I'm really interested in what you're talking about, the, some types of what kids can go through as they're learning how to deal with their own bodies not doing what they want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help young kids? How can families help kids to learn how to deal with that?
It's hard because again, every kid with Tourette's is so different. For me and my own personal experience and from my family, it took a lot of patience. It took, from my parents' point of view, just giving me a lot of time to figure out my own body. And it could be frustrating. I grew up with 3 sisters. It could be frustrating for them. It could be frustrating for my parents, right? But that time and that patience and grace to allow someone who's so young to figure themselves out, when most people don't do that until their 20s, if they have to at all. So, it's for a young kid to have to figure that out so soon. And when, they're going through a lot of other things when through childhood can be really hard. So I would say just the biggest thing is like giving those kids patience and grace and always making sure they know that you're there for them.
Yeah, I think it's like Ryan was saying, you kind of learn as you go, for the kids and the parent, anybody. But just having a community like this and resources and people out there, just, reach out to,
Yeah, I've been lucky enough. I am an elementary educator. And so, coming across some of my students that then get diagnosed and being able to be there and help and support them and their families, that's a huge piece as well. So I think, not only giving that support to your own child, but then as a parent, reaching out for support from communities like this. If, that's huge. My mom always says that finding camp was like the best thing that she could have done for me, because she's seen how much it's helped me, and how much Scott has done for me and the friendship that I've built with Brian. And that's, I look forward to it every year.
Well, this year will be our 30th summer going on, 29 in person. One year we had to do through Zoom, a Zoom camp due to COVID. This will be our 30th summer, and we have served well over 1,200 children during that time. And a lot of our camp staff are former campers. In fact, both Ryan and Brian first came to camp as campers. I seem to remember both of them their first years. And now many years later, they're running the camp and pushing me further into the rocking chair retirement.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things too is, you know, Brian and I get to continue to go back.
Ryan, one of your favorite things is pushing Scott into the rocking chair?
Yes.
Awesome.
No, but one of my favorite things is
April.
getting to like see those campers. Then like some of them come like when they're 7 years old, and then getting to see them kind of grow up and then get to become counselors too. And it's so fun to get to, and then you really get to know them. Although it's 1 week, you really get to know them. I mean, it's 1 week, but it's 24/7 1 week. So it's like a whole year.
Well, it's interesting because from start of camp now, so the time we started camp 30 years ago, we now have between campers and staff, we have one doctor, one dentist, one PhD, and probably within the next year, a second PhD, who all started out as campers and now are doing very well in their professions.
So I can see how kids going camp and that's going to be fantastic, and possibly then they exchange phone numbers. I don't know what kids do these days. Back then we had to get like addresses with zip codes and stamps and crap. You know, I don't know. They like pair their phones. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the kids do. But then how, right? How does that work for adults? Do they stay connected in other ways too, through different organizations? Or because I can't imagine that the need for support just stops when you turn 18.
Well, one thing that is happened, especially through the Tourette Association, the adult population with Tourette's has been probably underserviced over the years, and that's something we're trying to address, especially through the conference. We have really 2 or 3, one session specifically for adults, but we have 2 or 3 of the sessions are trying to focus on adult issues as well, or kids coming up through it, including the one you're doing, Tim, on transitioning. So, and I think a lot of our, like right now, a number of our former campers are also on our board of directors, Ryan and Brian, and we have some other former campers and staff that are now running the organization. Not just the day-to-day, not just at camp, but making decisions on the board year-round. So, and you do see some networking after camp with some of these individuals. I said I still keep in contact with the doctor, the dentist. We've got a former camper who is now a associate professor of something at the University of Nevada, Lake Tahoe or something. Can't remember his thing. So yeah, I do keep, at least with I do keep in contact with a lot of former campers. And I know our staff has kind of grown and bonding with it. It's kind of interesting to watch campers grow up to become staff, and then seeing how the staff interact together, not only at camp but outside of camp as well.
Yeah, I don't know about I feel like I was lucky enough to find the camp, and so like Scott said, he sends lots and lots of emails to keep us all connected, and so that was like a huge thing too. And so I haven't had to find another place to look for that community sense, because I've been lucky enough to kind of grow up having this community through like being a camper and then a counselor. And so I've been lucky enough to kind of have this community that Scott's created here.
Well, there's also support, whether you're a youth with Tourette's, teen with adult Tourette's, an adult with Tourette's, or a parent with children with Tourette's, through the Tourette Association of America. And I'm sure maybe Ellie can put up the link for the Tourette Association of America. The website has a lot of good resources. We then also can help you find a local chapter that might be able to help you. Local chapters do programs like the one we're doing, the Tourette Connect Conference in Wisconsin. But there's also online support groups. videos, and they do I think the Tourette Association does webinars at least twice a month. I know I've spoken on several webinars over the last few years on employment issues, for instance. So I see Ellie's putting up the website for the Tourette Association of America.
So I have an interesting question for you that is probably one that I shouldn't ask when it's being recorded or anything, but it's a discussion that I'm starting to have with more and more people, especially adults, with like autism or some other developmental disabilities. And that is this whole thing of, do you consider Tourette's as a disability? Do you consider yourself as someone with a disability or not?
Well,
Yeah.
Tourette's does fit into the category of, I worked in human resources for 33 years. I will tell you, Tourette's does fit under a disability as defined by the American with Disabilities Act, because it does affect one or more of life's major functions. Do I consider myself an individual with disability? I would say yes, because my Tourette's is I can't really hide my tics. So it does indicate to if someone just meets me, doesn't know what's going on, that something's going on with me. So I think, yeah, I do consider myself with a disability. Does it hold me back? No. It's helped me excel in a number of different areas. So I think legally it meets the definition, but whether you consider yourself disabled or not, that's up to each individual. Really got to make a decision on
I kind of agree with most of what Scott said. I mean, yeah, it is kind of a label or however you want to define it, but I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there's been tough time, and there's been, whether it was test taking or, having to get extended time on things, for school wise and all that. I mean, that was definitely a disadvantage. But, there's, that's why they have things to help, help kids with disabilities or anything in that realm, to kind of, even the playing field a bit. But I also think that it's also probably helped me like, do better in other ways. I don't know, maybe I don't know, it's hard to describe it. Maybe, like a certain, might help you, like, trying to think of words, but advance you in other categories of, I don't know, maybe I'm better at math because I have Tourette's, or, think differently, or, and also I think once you kind of are able to help or cope with what you have, and maybe, find ways to go about, essentially, if you're having Tourette's pretty bad at one point, and then another point you don't, then maybe you're even benefiting more than if you finding ways to.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying, Ryan, is like I like what Scott said, is like, legally, yes, I would be considered having a disability, but I think there's such a stigma around the word disability. People have a view of what they think that means, and so I think that you have to remember at times too that the word disability is such a spectrum itself, and even like what Brian said with having Tourette's, it kind of waxes and wanes, and so there are some times where my Tourette's is way worse than others. And does that mean that, like, I guess does that mean that sometimes my disability, like, then I have a disability and now I don't because it's not really noticeable at the moment? No, because I still have it. But it's just, I think people need to kind of back away from the stigma of disability being like their view, and remember that it's this wide spectrum. And it doesn't mean that you might be able to see it. Just because you can't, when I'm walking down the street, hear or see me ticking, doesn't mean that I'm not. It doesn't mean that I don't have a disability. There's a lot going on in my mind, and I'm saying, don't do that, or I'm ticking, but it's like squeezing a muscle that you can't see. And so that kind of, getting people away from that stigma of disability, and remembering that there's a lot of things that fall under that that you may not see.
Well, we have a question about, do any of you have ways that work that your work or friends accommodate your tics when it's a tough day. Well, I know with my Tourette's, it's been humor, trying to deal with it. In the workplace, I don't mind when I was working, didn't mind self-denigrating my Tourette's with my coworkers. I mean, it got to the point that like my boss was really mad at somebody, but couldn't really say what they wanted to say. I said, I'll be glad and go swear at them and blame it on my Tourette's, even though I don't have the coprolalia. Or my boss will say, we'll send Scott and let him swear at them. So that was just an inside joke with my boss, but that was one way to use the humor. Again, that may not be something everyone's going to agree with or like with this like type of humor, but that worked in easing the tension sometimes at work when my Tourette's was bad.
Yeah, no, mine was the exact same. I think I have always found that humor has helped me cope with my Tourette's, as well as like eases the conversation for others, lightens it up so other people feel comfortable asking questions. I have always been very open about my Tourette's, so my colleagues and have always known, and a lot of times they're usually surprised, like, what, I never noticed. And then when I start kind of describing some of my tics that I have kind of morphed into smaller things over the years. And so it's just small stretches that maybe you don't notice as much. I think they're very supportive, and they know that stressful situations or when I'm excited or nervous, those times can make it worse, but they have never I've been lucky that in my working life, I have not had any big issues. And again, I am an educator, so I have explained it to classes before. I've had kids who never even noticed it. And I had a class one year that just straight out asked, why do you do this all the time? And I was like, oh, let's just have a conversation about it. And honestly, it was lucky enough that the week before, a parent in another class asked me to explain it to their class because a boy in there was diagnosed. And so it kind of it helps lead to those open conversations. But I think it kind of just depends person to person, how open they are and how comfortable they feel explaining it, because not everyone is, and that's totally fine. But for me, it was, like Scott said, humor was always an easy one for me, making sure though that you're not letting people laugh at you and we're all laughing together, because that can be, there's a line there.
Brian, you have anything you want to add?
Pretty much sums up. Humor, I was going to say, was the biggest kind of thing. Just being able to, laugh at it a little bit, kind of, enlighten. But as far as the workplace, I don't think I've really haven't really been accommodated, but I don't really think it affects me too much. I mean, school when I was younger and all that was definitely something that needed some accommodation, but working, it might hold me back, slightly here and there, but I've dealt with it enough, I'm kind of know how to live with it, but yeah.
So I would like to take this opportunity then to invite anybody who does have questions. Feel free to unmute and I'll call on you. You can put your questions into the chat, or if you have any comments that you'd like to make, we are open to comments on Scott and Friends, or Afternoon Drive. So anybody have any comments or questions or anything that they would like to say?
So going back on what Tim was saying about whether you class it as a disability, in the UK, we actually do class it as a disability. There's no ways about it. So I don't know if it's obviously different in America, but I thought I'd just say from a person in the UK's perspective.
Oh, thank you, JJ. And I think I asked the question poorly. Because I guess what what I'm trying to ask is if you consider yourself to be disabled, because a lot of people have disabilities and they're like, well, that's the category that I'm in and that's how I could get services and that's how I can help. But I don't feel like I'm more disabled than anybody else around me.
Yeah.
And so I like that what Scott had said about that personal, you also have that take of how you view yourself. Yeah,
we don't really get it's hard to put into words, but we don't get a sort of chance to label ourselves as disabled. It's just you have Tourette's, you are disabled. It's sort of like that, which I think should be done differently. But I'm only young. I don't have a say in all that.
Well, that does work in the United States under the American with Disabilities Act. You probably, because you have Tourette's and it affects a major life function, that's a definition that you fall under disabled, but you may not need any accommodation. You may not need anything. I mean, throughout my 30 years of working, I asked for an accommodation once, which was more of a preventative measure because I had a really, how would I say this? Not very understanding supervisor at the time, but that kind of got straightened out. But it's like, yeah, it does fall under legal. It is legally defined as Tourette probably qualifies you as disability, but you may not need anything, so it may not make any difference.
Yeah,
I know I got a doctor's note to put into my file just so there wouldn't be any questions about it. But it was more of just a preemptive move to try and prevent any problems from occurring. And actually, we've actually at camp, we actually had a couple of staff members from the United Kingdom. So we've had some international staff as well. That was a while ago, but our staff at camp does sometimes come from around the world.
Yeah, I like how you have a camp because I'm not 100% sure, but I've never heard of it in the UK. So it's quite cool that you have a community.
I believe there is a camp in the United Kingdom, or at least there was. You'd have to contact the Tourette organization in the United Kingdom. I think it's called Tourette Actions. But if you just Google Tourette United Kingdom, you'll find the organization. It's very large and active.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Oh, if I put in a plug about our summer camp. Here's a question. What are some of the favorite activities that kids choose at camp? Brian, you want to address that?
I mean, it's a normal traditional camp, just like any other YMCA camp. Kids can go biking and swimming and play capture the flag and go on boats. But honestly, for me, my favorite part is what we do. We do have the TikTok, is what we call it. We have one day where we usually choose it towards the end of the week once the kids are a little bit more comfortable with each other, and just get our camp together and allow the kids to share their experiences, give each other advice. A lot of times it's their first time meeting someone else with Tourette's and just feeling fully 100% comfortable with themselves. And so getting advice from other people that have gone through or are currently going through the same thing they are. It's always touching to me to see these kids bond with each other and share their experiences, good or bad, and kind of learn from each other. Yeah, that's usually one of my favorite parts of the week.
And Brian, I know you're going to say macrame. That's probably what all the kids just want to do, macrame, if it's still being offered. But what do you see as the favorite activities or the favorite parts of camp that kids are getting out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just, I've been to other camps before, not Tourette's camps or anything. And they were fun. But I think this camp, not even because the Tourette's and everything else, I think it's just in general a better camp. But the fact that we have the Tourette's, I think the biggest thing for me was, especially when you're younger and depending on where you live and whatnot. I mean, I didn't really know anybody with Tourette's. Maybe met somebody here, once or twice here and there, hung out for a tiny bit. But then you go to camp and you have 30 other kids that you're bonding with for an entire week. It's just, it's awesome. So that's why, we've been back for 20 years now.
Yeah. And then 20 years later, after that 1 week of being stuck with each other, we're still stuck with each other.
Yeah. But I don't know, activities. I mean, they have a lake, they got pool, they got,
swimming. They have this beautiful brand new park.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
I think we have more fun on that than the kids.
Yeah, there's Gaga. The kids love Gaga. The food's decent. I mean,
hold on. What's Gaga?
It's basically Foursquare meets dodgeball in a pit. Yeah, it's pretty intense, but the kids play it at most elementary schools nowadays too. And it is like the game. You just throw everybody in a pit and it's like last one standing.
But it's also a lot.
Very safe though.
It actually is safer than dodgeball because it has to.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
It has
You
to
can only
the ball-
hit below the knees. Yeah. So it's, and there's,
that's probably the favorite. Yeah, I would say.
yeah, Foursquare. There's usually like a theme day where, you know, every year they'll come up with like a different theme. God, what was last year? One year it was like Harry Potter, and that was
Yeah,
super
yeah.
fun. And the whole day was
Disney
wrapped
stuff
around
and-
Harry Potter stuff. And there's arts and crafts for those kids that maybe don't like the outdoor stuff as much. Yeah, it's just lots and lots and lots of fun.
Oh, I know that we're coming closer in time. So before I let Scott do one more commercial for the New York Tourette's conference that's coming up, starring Tim Markle, talking about transition from youth to adults. At least I think that should be the subtitle, but that could just be me. What would you guys say to, I mean, we know as people with disabilities, this world isn't always designed for us. And what would you say to people? How could people help you maneuver through this world that's made for the abled, whatever that means, the abled person? Are there ways that people can support you in your journeys?
For me, I would just say, don't assume, just ask. Because I think sometimes, you know, when I say that I have Tourette's, people assume what that means. Again, that stigma around like, oh, so you scream cuss words, right? So instead of just assuming, you know, asking about it and being willing to learn instead of, you know, just sticking with what you think it might be.
Yeah, I think especially when you're younger too, just being able to, I know it's hard for, you know, most people with Tourette's, especially when they're younger, being able to, you know, tell people about it, you know, be embarrassed or trying to hide it or, but I think especially kids, you know, what they don't know is confusing, and they don't, you know, to them, they don't know what to say, how to handle it, you know, so if you kind of, you know, explain your situation and have Tourette's and what it is, they say, oh, you know, that makes sense. Now, you know, now I know why you're screaming in the middle of class, or, you know, throwing your hands up or this or that. And it's not, I think it's not as, you know, a taboo to them at that point. But as far as, yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. But then getting through, I mean, there's all kinds of, depending on you know, what you want to do with your Tourette's and how severe they are. I mean, there's all kinds of options, you know, like we were talking about, support groups and all that. And then I'm sure there's even, you know, financial and other, you know, any type of aid, you know, is out there. But yeah.
Before we close out, we do have another question. What happens if a camper experiences homesickness or anxiety at camp?
We are lucky enough that we have 2 social workers on site with us. And so they help out with that a lot. I think it's usually on a kid by kid basis. So sometimes, you know, if a kid feels some homesickness, we'll call home, talk to the parents, ask them if like it would make it better or worse if they talked to you, because the parents will know that. So sometimes we'll help them. And honestly, we have a lot of staff. So we will be able to pull those kids aside, see what we can do to make them feel comfortable. Sometimes you know, it's a long week, and sometimes maybe they just need a few minutes to chill out, or they, you know, need a nap because they're just exhausted on Wednesday, which is usually the middle of the week hit day, you know? And so we kind of work with a kid by kid basis to make sure, because the point of camp is that these kids are getting something positive out of it. And they're, you know, they leave with a good experience and they've learned something new and they have some new friends. So we don't want them to feel upset or anxious. And so we work with those kids to make sure that they feel comfortable and happy during the whole week.
Fantastic. Well, Scott, you want to tell us one more time about the conference that is coming up, and then we'll close this out.
Well, on Saturday, April 1st at Turning Rivers Campsite in Campbellsport, Wisconsin, we have the Tourette Connect Conference starring Tim talking about transition.
Yes. Perfect.
being put on by the Wisconsin Tourette Association. We have 2 tracks, one for children and teens with Tourette's and their siblings, and another one for adults and parents of children with Tourette syndrome. We have 5 different speakers on it, and the kids have a separate program. The conference is totally 100% free, and that includes a free lunch. So it's well worth coming.
Do I get the free lunch too, Scott?
Yes, everyone gets the free lunch.
No, everybody gets a free lunch.
Yeah, everyone gets the free lunch that attends the conference. Thanks to a generous donation from a family foundation, help pay for the thing. But again, it's totally free. The registration, you can find it. The links are on the in the chat. It's also, you can find it on Eventbrite. Just search Tourette Connect. You'll find the conference. Again, it's in Campbellsport, Wisconsin. Looking forward to a fun-filled and very information-packed day on Saturday, April 1st, where I promise no April Fool's jokes.
I don't think you're going to be able to keep that promise, to tell you the truth, Scott. I'm very doubtful, and I'm looking forward actually to you bringing forth your April Fool's jokes.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find something despite what I've been told I can't do.
That's right.
Since the staff never listens to me at camp, I never listen to them either. So I probably will end up doing some jokes. And again, Brian will be joining us on the staff for the youth program at the Tourette Connect conference.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. If you get a moment, we would love to have your feedback. If you put your email in the chat, then I will be able to send you the follow-up about when this recording is, and Scott can pass it along to the friends as well. Obviously, if I don't have your email, I can't let you know anything that's going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm about to blow like a...
And I'll be editing. Because that's what we do. We can edit. So thank you guys so very much for being here today. Our Scott and Friends, our afternoon drive. There is feedback. If you could provide us feedback, please, not on the last clip that hopefully you will not see when this gets posted. But this sounds really cool. And I am looking forward to meeting Brian in person and at the camp. And every year I love talking and learning more. So thank you all for being here. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks,
All right.